Efficiency in the data center space has improved by 80% in the last 10 years alone. The critical question now is, where will the next 80% come from? To answer that question, I've got here with me Kevin Brown, Senior Vice President and CTO of the IT division at Schneider Electric. Kevin, thanks a lot for talking to me.
My pleasure.
What's all this transformation been about, and how did you get to this 80%?
Well, we modeled out basically, what did a typical data center look like, say, in 2007, and then what do we think they look like in 2017? And, pretty much you can take a look at it and say we've eliminated about 80% of the losses in the physical infrastructure. Just by doing things like putting in better UPSs, more efficient UPSs, more efficient cooling architectures, as well as making sure that we're using best practices like containment and so forth. And when you do that, if you do it properly today, you can be about 80% more efficient than where we were. And I think the question now that we are starting to ask ourselves as an industry is, are we getting to the point of diminishing returns? And then, where's the next 80% going to come from over the next 10 years if you think we need to repeat it again? And I think I would argue that given the trends in the industry, we just might have to do that.
Okay. What sort of trends would drive that need?
Well, like I mentioned, is if we're hitting diminishing returns on just making the physical infrastructure better, I mean, certainly there's going to continue to be activity on that, and we'll keep driving down these efficiency curves, and there's opportunities to do it. But ultimately, we think we have to start looking more broadly at the whole ecosystem and the interaction between what's happening on the IT side with the physical infrastructure, as well as what's the impact of that on the grid itself, and how do we start leveraging different technologies across those to see if we can keep not just the efficiency of the data center, but also looking at the overall energy consumption, which is not the same thing. And so we think there's a lot of interesting opportunities for the industry there that maybe we don't understand all of it yet, but we're certainly heading down that path.
Okay, and do you think there needs to be more collaboration within the industry itself to go down that path?
Well, I think in order to have that happen, in order to achieve the energy consumption reduction or stay on this curve that we're on, it's going to take much more open and collaborative work. And as part of that, when you look at these very complex systems starting to interact with each other, in our view, software is going to be a key enabler of that. And but the software is going to be done differently. At Schneider, we believe it's going to have to be cloud-based in many ways, but also then much more open, more open APIs, more collaboration to allow these different systems to more easily interact with each other.
Okay, and how is this going to work in an edge world? How are you going to bring the efficiency into the edge deployment?
Well, I think you have to look at where the opportunities. First of all, let's stick. If you stick with the big data centers, is what are the technologies that are going to come in that are going to force us to maybe rethink how we're doing things? And we're doing a lot of looking at, if GPUs start coming into the data centers as opposed to CPUs for artificial intelligence, the energy footprint of those chips is much different. So that might open up new technologies that we have to consider. If you look at what's happening in the investment that the governments are making in renewables, and the car market and what that's doing to batteries. Renewables with batteries is a macro trend that I don't think is going to stop. And as an industry, how do we capitalize on that? How do we benefit from that? You look at energy storage with batteries, the technology that's there now, first of all, has become much more cost effective, being driven by the car industry, really. And on top of that, that opens up new use cases that we haven't had before. So if you look at within the core data center market, today we were talking a lot about how does that apply in the data center market, and then depending on how you define edge, those same technologies can be used in edge applications as well, which could be very interesting.
Okay, another important and quite interesting aspect of the efficiency side of it is also the predictability, being able to predict the future almost. So sending the engineer the day before. What is Schneider doing around that?
Well, and again, I mentioned before the need for kind of cloud-based management and much more open APIs. And there's a lot of what our EcoStruxure platform is about. And ultimately, the analytics that we can bring in, if we can get the data and get access and start using big data tools and get enough data, we're going to be able to move towards condition-based maintenance. We still know that humans cause most of the downtime in data centers, so the question becomes, how do we start eliminating that or minimizing the need for that? So the idea of these regularly scheduled maintenance, the promise of analytics is, we won't have to do that. We'll only go in there when we can predict there's going to be a problem. And we think that's the first real use case of artificial intelligence inside of the data center or what have you. And again, our philosophy is, it really requires this data getting into the cloud, where you get the scalability and be able to get the visibility that everybody needs. And ultimately, that's a lot of what EcoStruxure is about, is trying to bring that. And at Schneider's level, what's exciting is it's not only about data centers, it's also about buildings in general, industry, process controls, as well as the grid. And that's a lot of part of our vision of where we think the industry needs to go.
And what can we expect from the IT division of Schneider in the next year or so? Not just within the efficiency side, so new products.
Well, certainly we see inside of the market a big trend towards lithium-ion batteries.
Okay.
We announced that we are going to get into this using lithium-ion batteries on UPSs 2 years ago, and we've certainly seen a big uptick in that activity. But as I mentioned, I think over the next year you'll see a lot of things in our area about what we're doing with that energy storage and thinking about it in a little bit different way. I think some of the things that we talked about today in terms of how do you deal with GPUs and the level of heat that they generate and how do you remove that, I think you'll see some things coming out more publicly on that. And those are kind of the major themes that we're driving on, and as always, we continue to come out with things like HyperPod, which is trying to simplify and make more efficient use of capital, make it easier to deploy these best practices that we know exist. And we certainly see that happen where we're using that tool, that product. We've seen customers 15% lower capital expenditure on the white space build out, and they're doing it 20% faster, and they get a better result at the end. So we're going to continue driving on that because we still see, even in this discussion of these new technologies that we're playing around.
Love hype around the love then.
Yeah, there's a lot that the industry can still do with trying to simplify installation, and again, that's why not only HyperPod, but you see us continue to invest and promote our prefabricated modular capabilities.
Okay, and one final question. This is Data Cloud 2018. In 12 months, Data Cloud 2019. What question have you got now that you want to see answered in the next 12 months?
Oh, geez, that's you're asking me to predict what we're going to talk about a year from now.
Pretty much.
I think this. I'd be very interested to see if we can get better clarity on kind of what's happening with the GPUs coming into the data center and what the impact that's going to have. I would hope by this time next year we can give even more clarity of what that might look like.
Okay. It'll be very interesting when you start getting to the GPUs as well.
Exactly.
Next generations.
There's always a new generation.
Yes. All right, Kevin. Thanks a lot for talking to me. Yeah. Don't forget you can follow Data Economy on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and also visit the website on www.data-economy.com.